processes, because I think that's where people struggle. They're like, hey, I'm in, I get the spiritual abuse. What are the processes and structures? Just give us a couple of those, because I know you've written about it in the book, and we've alluded to it a little bit earlier. But what are some of these processes that need to happen, or maybe warnings about, like, sitting down and talking to that abusive person? Hey, they're not ready yet. These are some things that are guidelines, let's say, that they need to have as they're going about this process, trying to implement it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to say here. I mean, it's interesting. In the last 10 years has been this sort of burst of these reconciliation ministries, everybody kind of peacemaker style, but there's a bunch of them out there now. And on one level, I would applaud the idea, right? We certainly want more peace and more reconciliation. But a lot of the systems and processes for some of these organizations can be unhealthy and can really rush people into ill-conceived reconciliation processes. And some of the mistakes are obvious. Some of the mistakes is, you pursue reconciliation before you pursue truth and justice. In other words, let's not worry about who's at fault. Let's just get these two people together and let's make them be friends again, right? We're never gonna call out the sin or hold the pastor accountable for the sin. We just want to get these two people together and get them reconciled. And so they push the victims into this reconciliation process. It can be pretty ill-conceived. Closely related to that is the thing you hinted at. Sometimes these victims are just traumatized. They're not ready for this. They're not able to jump into this and need to be given time and space. Misuses of Matthew 18. We've talked about that already. Just this idea that it's this wooden one-size-fits-all structure for every conflict in the church, which I think is a total misreading of the text and just, defies common sense also at a number of points. So there's all these things that need to be fixed. And then positively, at the end of the book, I recommend some processes that I think can help. I mean, I think there needs to be, and this is the one thing I'll mention here, or so many things I mention, is I just think in any credible abuse scenario, credible accusation, there needs to be a third-party investigation by somebody who knows what they're doing when it comes to abuse. Organizations are not very good at investigating themselves. The Ravi Zacharias thing, the Bill Hybels thing, prove that in spades, right? They all came back and said, our guy's fine. What's the problem here? We've investigated it. We looked into it. All good here. No, you need a third-party investigation. I think that's one of the big takeaways in my research, and I hope people do that.
Well, not even in regards to the church. I mean, I remember CT ran a whole thing where they actually published the findings of independent organizations.
I was proud of them for that.
I was too. I thought, wow,
good for you.
That's transparent.
It is.
I think the transparency helps remove the frustration, because people want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged. And when someone admits it, you're less likely to remember. It sounds strange. It's almost as if there's that biblical principle of forgiveness. When you don't admit wrong, that's where that growing group comes of opponents. When you admit it, it dissipates, because people recognize, especially if there's proper means of accountability that have been put in place. We're not talking just about the church, but we're talking about across the board.
No, that's right. I mean, I think there's a sense that secrecy is going to solve it, and it rarely ever solves it. It actually creates a distrust in institutions, here's the thing that's funny, is that the people who are trying to defend the church and argue that we have to make sure the church's authority is upheld, which in broad strokes I agree with, think that the best way to do that is to not be transparent and to not be open and honest about these things. And they don't realize that they're actually destroying the very organization they purport to want to defend. Because as soon as you do that, the trust in the church just goes down, down, down. In other words, you're actually creating more suspicion and doubt rather than helping. And I think that's the irony.
Do you think that's part of the reason why we've got so many? I mean, again, it's a multitude of factors, but at least one of them would be the reason that people are deconstructing right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
They've lost that trust in the social credibility. Because it's I've maintained that our social credibility score right now just is in the toilet.
Oh, yeah.
As across the board, we don't have the moral high ground from a cultural perspective because of these scandals and our refusal to admit them. I think if we admitted them to the culture, I think that people would be like, okay.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, I think there's a sense in which the culture here is looking to us to be what we say we should be. And when they see that we're not really going to do that, they don't believe that we even believe that in what we say we believe. And that shatters the whole point.
Isn't that what Russell Moore said? It's not that people don't believe, it's that they recognize that the young people today don't believe. It's that the church doesn't believe what
we don't
it
even
says.
believe it. They say you
Yeah.
don't even take seriously your own beliefs. So this is why I've said in other contexts, I didn't use this phrase in the book, but I've said in other contexts that dealing with abuse is actually a form of apologetics. And people don't realize this, is that the deconstructions in the last 10 years are not random, in my opinion. You know, people will say, oh, well, they're deconstructing because the culture is so bad and the culture is attacking us all the time. That's why. And I'm like, okay, that probably explains some. But I think there's one of the biggest reasons for deconstruction, though, is people get inside the church and realize this is a bungled mess of people who are frauds and inauthentic. And we think, how could we think that doesn't matter for our apologetics? We have to own that and address that as part of our apologetic repertoire. So it's not just here's an argument for God exists, but rather here's what the church should be doing. Here's why we haven't done it. We're sorry for not doing it. And we need to press ahead towards a new path. And I think that is part of our witness to the world.